8:41. Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw. Mike Richards as the gambling talk continues. Gambling. And as we have our two Italians, if this show were in Dublin, they take a look at these names and go, we've got Tony McElhenney and Pat McGuinness joining us here this morning.
I was going to say McGroin.
Yeah, I was going to say they wouldn't, they'd have no chance. So tell us about spaghetti this morning, fellas. It would be, but of course it's our good friend Lucc. And now I understand, Pat, you work with my buddy Dino. Is that right? Lorenzo?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Shout out Lorenzo Cicchella.
Yeah. So it's ironically, when I had my big surgery, yes, we know the save going to Tony Lucisano.
Thank you.
And there I'm in the hospital, and their dad's beside me. Domenico's beside me. It's the weirdest thing that could have ever. I mean, you talk about God looking over your shoulder, and there they are. And so we're explaining why Lorenzo is called Dino, and she's like, I don't know what do you say? Because like Dean Martin. There's a pause. You don't look like Dean Martin.
No, he certainly doesn't. He doesn't, but I can see him. He's about as entertaining as Dean Martin.
Yeah, he is. Are you kidding me? And then his twin brother comes in. He's talking to me. He goes, "Hey, I'm not Lorenzo." I said, "I'm going to kill you. I'm on a hospital bed. You're tricking me. What is this? God sees this. Just so you know, God sees everything.
God sees everything."
We are thrilled to have you back. It was so much fun last time, and man, oh man, you look at how things can change quickly. And watching that Calgary Flames game last night, I was sick to my stomach. But I will say this: in the world of gaming, and you're the best damn fantasy hockey podcast might have some of this, because you talked about the dogs. There would have been some in Calgary who are just angry with this team, right? They don't like Darryl. They don't like what has happened. They don't like Huberdeau. They don't like Kadri. They especially last night didn't like Kadri. And there would have been some money sprinkled on the Blackhawks, which would have seemed insane. They've lost winless in the last 6 or 8 games. They're in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, and they win. That basically has almost made this game tonight, which I was looking forward to, between Calgary and Winnipeg, as the game. And I don't know what's left. That was a horrific meltdown and ending the season, if it is, in the worst way possible.
If you listen to our last podcast, we talked about this game coming up. And the one thing that we forgot to mention is, and this will go to Lorenzo's other half, better known as Tony Mercantonio over at TSN as well. And he always, we nicknamed him Tony Traps because he always talked about trap games. So we gave him a mob name and we called him Tony Traps. Well, last night, you know what? He may be onto something, because Pat, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but last night that was a perfect trap game. Maybe what would have happened was they were looking so forward to playing Winnipeg tonight, they didn't even consider much, of the Chicago Blackhawks. So they probably looked past them, and sadly they got caught up in it. And it was a really bad loss last night.
Yeah, we thought it was a foregone conclusion that they were just going to walk over Chicago right onto Winnipeg, scoop possible 4 points and make their way into the playoffs, like we talked about the last time we were on. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And yeah, that was just a microcosm of their entire season last night, was just when they needed it. And they've actually gotten it done lately, despite themselves. Like even against Anaheim, the game before, they go down 2-0. Markstrom gets pulled. Vladar comes in, saves the day for them, and keeps their playoff hopes alive. But to have a letdown against Chicago at home, and now you got to walk into a raucous Winnipeg barn tonight, I don't see it going well for Calgary.
No, I don't think so either. And we just started talking about, as the playoffs, literally around the corner. We're talking less than 2 weeks now, and what teams look like they're ready to go. Well, looking at the West, which is relatively wide open, and in Colorado, who's been relatively quiet this year, now you take a look at it, and like the two best teams to me, even though Vegas has a record, and you think Colorado will be dangerous, but Edmonton, to me, for the first time in my life, kind of, we have not been friends over the years, myself and Edmonton, but there's the Connor McDavid, and like, for instance, Connor McDavid, in terms of the money buying audience that would go and see, so spectators that want to, is there any disagreement, argument that the reason that you would pay a high price for a ticket is to see Connor McDavid?
No, not.
Like-
Are you kidding me? No, I would like people. I'm sure are going to be paying thousands and thousands to watch him in the playoffs. And the deeper he goes, the more he's going to command. And you know what? He deserves it. He's just a generational talent that we have not seen, in I don't know how many years, but since Crosby came in, right?
So in terms of, so if we're looking at money in the playoffs, and again, Pat, you like to look for the dogs and so on, but if you're looking at point totals, right, and you're in some of these fantasy pools that show up obviously around this time of year where, you start picking players, and obviously McDavid's going to go pretty high, but you look traditionally at how those pools work, you kind of have to have your money in the right place for the team that's going to make the big run. If you load yourself up with a certain team and they don't go on, you're kind of screwed. But one of those teams for me has always been Tampa. And I kind of still think, obviously Bruins are going to be up in the first, but for points, for those kinds of individuals to play these kinds of pools and so on, what players are we talking about here? Where do you think some value is?
Yeah, I think it's right on Tampa. You can get them at a bargain probably because a lot of people think they're at the end of their run. They've played a lot of hockey, and you can get that narrative, especially because they're probably going to be playing the Boston Bruins if they manage to get past the Maple Leafs in the first round. So Braden Point, Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, Sergachev, these are all guys that you can probably scoop a little bit late in your drafts and even play some props on Bet365 point totals over under. Yeah, I have a future on Tampa to win the Stanley Cup. So and that's just me as a Leaf fan hedging. So, if they get bounced in the first round, I win either way.
That's very Italian.
Yeah. Risk averse, right? Risk averse, trying to, very Mussolini of me.
A Leaf fan. Imagine that, a Leaf fan picking Tampa. Wow.
What about you, Lucc? Where's some value for you looking at these playoffs coming up?
The one team, and it's funny, Brendan had mentioned it, was Minnesota with Kaprizov and Boldy and Hartman. I mean, these guys, but the problem is they may end up playing Colorado. But you know what? If you're in a fantasy pool, the Colorado guys are going to go early. So if you're late, if you've got a if you're last place in terms of picking, and then it's a snake draft, you may want to pick up a couple of Minnesota guys who no one's going to pick up and hope for the upset. The key to winning a lot of these fantasy pools is, getting the team that you think is going to go forward. And you know what? The favorite doesn't always win, as we know.
No, you can find value. I mean, does someone find value in the Devils at some point with the Devils? Are the Rangers going to be the kind of team that maybe put it together, going a bit of a run? Because the Rangers right now, to me, if they get the goaltending that they're more than capable of getting. Now, they haven't got it all year, but it doesn't matter now. Like it's go time now. It's about the now. Is there value in any Rangers for you?
Yeah,
I think you can.
Yeah, I think the kid line. I mean, if you think the Rangers are poised for a deep run, why not have a little investment there in Hedl and Kako and Lafreniere? We saw what they did in the playoffs last year. They'll be getting like some pretty sweet matchups against third pairings. And while the other two lines are, busting their hump to try to get something going, they feast. So for a deep run, yeah, you could look at third liners on the Rangers, third liners on Boston as well. I mean, we'll see if Taylor Hall comes back, but there's Pavel Zacha. There's players like that who you don't necessarily expect, but there's always that Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7, who just shows up when the time is right. And those are the players that I look to target, especially late in drafts.
And Lucc, what about you? So what is the topic lately? So if we're looking at, when you guys record some of the hotter topics of moving forward, what was the latest topic? What were you talking about on the show?
I mean, Calgary was covered. I mean, we covered Florida and Buffalo. We were talking about, guys like Devin Levy, who against had a spectacular game. And sadly, as the Italian in me uses the word triste, which is sad, which I am this morning because they're basically done. But there's going to be value with the Florida Panthers, for example. Now, who are they going to play? If they play Carolina, wow, that'll be a matchup and a half, because I think they're an upset could happen there. And then you've got, you can pick guys like Barkov, to lead the charge over there, and even a guy like Uyghur. I mean, there's definitely value with Florida Panthers as well.
Another Italian word that was said last night watching the Flames was merda. I think also came up as well.
That's
We're-
more fitting. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, sadly, I know how near and dear Calgary is to your heart, and believe me, I thought about you last night, going, "Oh, Mike is not going to be happy this
No,
morning. He's
no.
not going to be happy."
There's a lot of unhappiness in this household, but there always is. Now,
So Mike, sorry,
yeah.
if I can ask you, so
Yeah.
we've covered the Flames in depth on the pod.
Right.
But we're not watching every game. Obviously, we're not fans. So can you explain to us from a Flames fan perspective, what exactly is going on with the Flames this year? What is going on with Huberdeau, Kadri, the coach? What's not working there? Or
Well,
is it just the goaltending?
No, well, to all four of those issues that you just talked about are the
Okay.
issues that they cannot handle as the Flames Nation, as they would call themselves. They cannot stomach, I think, the fact that they paid all that money for Huberdeau and just didn't get a return. And Kadri was just especially dreadful last night. It's almost like he was mocking his contract in front of the entire sea of red. You had Daryl, who is always under the gun. As much as he's beloved out there, he also is under the gun because it's perceived that he plays and has an older style of mentality of how hockey's played behind the bench. Some of it's true, some of it's not true, but of course it falls on his shoulders in also a season where you've got Brad Treliving, will probably not be resigned. So depending on what happens, like, you've got two trains of thought in Calgary. You have a group that says now, with Murray, one of the owners who likes Daryl, if they move out Brad Treliving, that it is possible that Murray just might combine it like he did before and have Daryl as both the general manager and the coach, which would send a lot of the Flames fans jumping off ledges, half happy, half not. Because you talk about in Calgary who are, and the phrase will be used, are they Daryl guys? Now, a Daryl guy is a grinder. Technically, Kadri, upon that signing, was a Daryl guy to me. That did work, but it hasn't worked. And they have not got the goaltending. And Markstrom was, it was heavily on his shoulders, and they didn't get that. The problem is, it's like real estate. You put it in there, you think it's going to do well. You see developments going around the house. You're like, this property is going to go great, until something else happens and it's not worth that value anymore. What do you do? There's really nothing you can do. And they're just sort of sitting ducks because they don't have a lot in the cupboards. They've got a lot of guys. So they're going to play in the middle. And as you know, the worst thing in hockey in the NHL is being a middling team. Like, you'd rather be Columbus or somebody else that's just at the bottom of the barrel than being one of these teams that just is almost there. And Calgary right now is the definition of being in no man's land.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you've got to have more Tyler Toffoli's. I mean, wow,
yeah.
how good is he? How good has he been this year, Pat?
He's a Daryl guy.
He's a Daryl.
Yes,
guy.
He's a Daryl guy.
By definition,
he had him in
100%.
LA. Yeah, he had him in LA. Loved
Yep.
him there, and obviously, giving him all the responsibility in Calgary right now.
And he scored again last night. I think,
But
number
Mike,
34.
Both Mike and Lucc, I have to add, since both of your teams took tough L's last night,
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
not to rub it in, not to rub salt in the wounds, but is there something to be said for those teams going out and making moves at the deadline? Because neither of them did.
Daryl never does.
Daryl,
Historically, Daryl does not. He'll make a move a month before the trade deadline, before he'll be pushed into pulling the trigger on that. And look, it always, for the Flames, I can only speak about the Flames, but it was always going to be about the offseason because of the Treliving situation, because of Daryl's situation. And I said, ownership is they're Daryl people. I mean, it's why Daryl is there. And so that was always going to be an off-season thing. So it was sink or swim for whatever this group was going to be. And I can't believe I'm using that word group. Ever since Babcock, all I hear is, well, the group is a pretty good bunch of pros, and we got to go out there and play.
I'm having PTSD,
man. Pat, I want you to write a list about Lucc and all the things that he done bad, and I want you to stand up in front of Lucc and make that list for me if you could do that.
That's a scary good Babcock.
Yeah, I know. And for me, it's the Adam plan. Adams is he's staying the course, Pat. As I've talked to you about before, he could have made a move. He didn't. I wish he did. It could have got him over the edge, but you know what? He's sticking with the plan. There's a lot of signings that he's got to save money for coming up. A lot of great, young guys that are going to have to get paid soon. So I think we're just going to stay the plan and see what happens next year, especially with Levi and that.
Boys, great stuff as always. Love doing this. This is a lot of fun, a lot of information. And of course, as we get closer to the playoffs, I think if you're around, we keep going because there's going to be so much to talk about. Maybe even one dedicated to those that want to make up, the playoff pools that you see. You get sent on emails. People want to, they're always into what players do you pick? Who are the dark horses? Maybe we'll do some of that. But once again, boys, just fantastic job. Bravo. I really appreciate it. Great to have you here this morning.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, we love being on. Anytime, we're more than happy to come on and talk fantasy and talk puck and betting and all the other good stuff, and go Corey Connors this weekend.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know it's not the hockey. Do we have any thoughts on you got Corey Connors as a dark horse? Who do we like in there? Who are we looking for the Masters?
I'm going to go with, Scotty Scheffler is playing unbelievable. So it's tough to go against him. So I'll probably stay with him. But I'd love to see Rory win.
Well, that'd be great too. Pat, what do you think?
I'm going to say the same. Scotty Scheffler. I don't know how you're going to go against him. Brooks Koepka won on Live last week, so a little bit of value there.
Don't get me going on Live.
Yeah, Luc's favorite Live
and my good buddy Anthony Burrows, who I know is listening. I'm not ever going to take a Live guy, and he knows that.
Awesome, guys. Ci vediamo. Ciao.
Okay, ciao.
That is Pat and Lucc from the show that they're calling the best damn fantasy hockey podcast. And what a great job. That's been so much fun having here this morning. Also,